Hello, friends, and welcome to Jewels of Truth. Today we will continue reading cases of people in the 1880s, in the 1890s. Actually, this is 1880s. People, Seventh-day Adventists, who were punished for violating the Sunday law. This is part 3 in this series. And again, I'm going to read the statement from the Great Controversy, pages 605 to 606, which says, "Heretofore those who presented the truths of the third angel's message have often been regarded as mere alarmists. Their predictions that religious intolerance would gain control in the United States, that church and state would unite to persecute those who keep the commandments of God, have been pronounced groundless and absurd. It has been confidently declared that this land could never become other than what it has been, the defender of religious freedom. But as the question of enforcing Sunday observance is widely agitated, the event so long doubted and disbelieved is seen to be approaching, and the third message will produce an effect which it could not have had before." And that's what's coming in this country. Soon, these words that I've just read to you will be fulfilled. All right. So here we continue. There are people in and out of the Adventist church that poo-hoo the idea that there will be a Sunday law where Sabbath keepers will be persecuted. Well, here you go. Here's a case in the 1880s. This is the 11th case. A John A. Meeks, age 14 years, son of Edward L. Meeks, was indicted by the grand jury at the January term of the Circuit Court of 1886 for Sabbath breaking. The offense was shooting squirrels on Sunday. The place where the squirrels were shot was in a mountainous district entirely away from any public road or any place of public worship. He was reported by a Mr. M. Reeves. The sons of Mr. Reeves were hauling wood with a team on that same Sunday and were present with the Meeks boy in the woods and scared the squirrels around the trees for the Meeks boy to shoot. When the sport was over, the Meeks boy divided the game with the Reeves boys. So, wow, they're setting him up. They're scaring the squirrels around the trees for the Meeks boy to shoot, and the Meeks boy even divided the game. It divided the squirrels with the Reeves boys. Then the father of the Reeves boys reported the Meeks boy, and he was indicted. I wonder if they told the judge that the Meeks boy had divided that game with them. His case was held over to await the decision of the Supreme Court in the Skulls case. At the January term in 1887, the boy confessed judgment and was fined $5 and costs, and $3 county tax was assessed, amounting in all to $22. The fine was paid and the boy was released, and I'm sure that was a big chunk of his money. Some of you watching this video may be laughing, okay? But let me tell you something. I expect this same sort of thing is going to be repeated, but in a lot larger scale and a lot more complicated and disgusting. This kind of stuff is going to happen again. So, in the 12th case, a Mr. Neusch, not sure of the pronunciation, Neusch, Neusch, in Magnet Cove, Arkansas. Mr. Neusch is a fruit raiser. On Sunday, June 21st, 1885, he was gathering early peaches which were overripe and were in danger of spoiling. He was half a mile from any public road and some distance from any place of public worship, and not in sight of either. The orchard was on the top of a mountain, and Mr. Nooch was not seen by anyone except a brother and Mr. Hudspeth. Mr. Hudspeth was with Mr. Nooch about 1 hour. He went to see him in behalf of a young man who had been working for him, and who, with others, had been caught stealing peaches from Mr. Nooch's orchard on the preceding Sunday. Mr. Hudspeth offered Mr. Nooch pay for the peaches if he would not report the young man. Mr. Nooch both refused to accept the money and promised to say nothing about the offense on condition that it should not be repeated. February 1886, Mr. Nooch was indicted for this offense of working on Sunday as related. Nooch, having been advised that there was most probably an indictment filed against him, went to the county clerk and made inquiry in regard to the matter. The clerk handed him a writ for his arrest, and Mr. Nooch took it to the sheriff and gave bond for his appearance at court. In August, his case was laid over to await the decision of the Supreme Court in the Skulls case. As soon as the decision had been rendered, Mr. Nooch went and confessed judgment and paid the fine and cost amounting to $25. Mr. Nooch was an observer of the seventh day. 13th case, F. N. Elmore, Springdale, Arkansas. Mr. F. N. Elmore was indicted at the March term of the Circuit Court of 1886 on the charge of Sabbath breaking. The indictment charged him with violating the Sunday laws by working on Sunday, November 1st, 1885. Mr. Elmore was arrested in April 1886 by Deputy Sheriff William Holcomb and was held in $250 bail for his appearance in the May term of the Circuit Court. On the 4th of May, Mr. Elmore appeared before Judge Pittman and, waiving his right to jury trial, submitted his case to the court for decision. Millard Courtney was the only witness examined. He testified that he had seen Mr. Elmore digging potatoes on the day above referred to on the premises of Mr. J. A. Armstrong. This work was done by Elmore on the day when Courtney took his friend to Armstrong to secure the contract for putting the tin roofing on the schoolhouse. And that is how Courtney knew Elmore had worked on that day. Elmore was convicted. The fine and cost were $28.95, which was paid, and he was released. Mr. Elmore was a Seventh-day Adventist. 14th case, William H. Fritz, Hinesville, Madison County, Arkansas. Mr. Fritz was indicted at the April term of the Circuit Court in 1886 for Sabbath breaking and held under $250 bonds for his appearance at the September term at Huntsville. Mr. Fritz is a wood workman, and the offense charged was for working in the shop on Sunday. The shop was in the country and 200 yards from the public road. The indictment was sustained. The defendant was fined $1 and costs amounting to $28. Mr. Fritz was a Seventh-day Adventist. 15th case, Z. Swearingen. Mr. Z. Swearingen was a member of the Church of Seventh-day Adventists who went from Michigan to Arkansas in 1879 and settled on a small farm 11 miles south of Bentonville, the county seat of Benton County. He and his son Franz, aged 17 years, were indicted by the grand jury at the April term of the Circuit Court of 1886 upon the charge of Sabbath breaking by performing labor other than customary household duties of daily comfort, necessity, or charity against the peace and dignity of the state of Arkansas on February 14, 1885, the same day being Sunday. Both were arrested by F.P. Galbraith, sheriff of Benson County, in May 1886 and were put under bond of $250 for their appearance at the fall term of Circuit Court September 27, 1886. The defendants appeared before Judge Pittman of the 4th Judicial District. John G. Cowan, witness for the state, testified that he saw Mr. Swearingen and his son hauling rails on Sunday, the 14th day of February 1885, as he returned from the funeral of Mrs. Boggett. Honorable J.W. Walker, attorney for the defendants, explained to the jury that the defendants conscientiously observed the seventh day of the week as the Sabbath, in accordance with the faith and practice of the church of which they were members. The prosecuting attorney stated to the jury that it was one of those Advent cases, quote unquote, one of those Advent cases. The jury found the defendants guilty as charged in the indictment, as Mr. Swearingen did not have the money to pay the fine and cost for himself and his son, amounting to $34.20. They were sent to jail until the money should be secured. They were put in jail October 1st, 1886. On the 13th day of the same month, the sheriff levied on and took possession of a horse belonging to Mr. Swearingen. The horse sold at sheriff's sale the 25th of the same month for $26.50, leaving a balance against Mr. Swearingen of $7.70. Yet both he and his son were released the same day that the horse was sold. On the 15th day of December, the sheriff appeared again on the premises of Mr. Swearingen and presented a bill for $28.95. Of this sum, $21.25 was for the board of Mr. Swearingen and son while in jail, and $7.70 balance on the fine. Mr. Swearingen had no money to pay the bill. The sheriff levied on his mare, harness, wagon, and cow and calf. Before the day of the sale, however, Mr. Swearingen's brethren raised the money for donations, paid the bill, and secured the release of his property. One thing about this case is to be noted particularly. The witness upon whose testimony these people were convicted said that he saw them hauling rails on Sunday, the 14th day of February, as he returned from the funeral of Mr. Boggett. Now, the act under which this prosecution was carried on became a law March the 3rd and was approved by the governor March 7th. Consequently, they were convicted for work done 17 days before the act was passed under which they were convicted. And this, dear friends, was done in the good old days. This is not the good old days today. So what will happen in these days in which we live? The 16th case, a Mr. Benson, I.L. Benson, was not at that time a member of any church, made no pretensions to religious faith, and did not observe any day. He had the contract for painting the railroad bridge across the Arkansas River at Van Buren, Arkansas. He worked a set of hands on the bridge all days of the week, Sundays included. In May 1886, Mr. Benson and one of his men were arrested on the charge of Sabbath breaking. They were taken to Fort Smith and arraigned before a justice of the peace. The justice did not put them through any form of trial, not even to ask them whether they were guilty or not guilty, but read a section of the law to them and told them he would make the fine as light as possible, amounting with costs to $4.75 each. They refused to pay the fines and were placed in custody of the sheriff. The sheriff gave them the freedom of the place upon requiring them to appear at the justice's office at a certain hour. Mr. Benson telegraphed to the general manager of the railroad in regard to the matter. The general manager telegraphed to his attorney in that city to attend to the cases. Mr. Benson and his men appeared before the justice for a hearing in their cases. It was granted with some reluctance. The attorney, Mr. Briolaire, told the justice it was a shame to arrest men for working on the bridge at the risk of their lives to support their families, when the public work in their own town was principally done on Sunday. A hearing was granted, and the trial was set for the next day. They were not placed under any bonds at all, but were allowed to go on their own recognizance. The following day, a jury was impaneled, and the trial begun. The deputy sheriff was the leading witness, and swore positively that he saw them at work on Sunday. The jury brought in a verdict to the effect that they had agreed to disagree. This was on Wednesday. The following Monday was set for a new trial. No bond was even at this time required. The defendants appeared at the time appointed and pleaded not guilty. The justice, after giving them a brief lecture, dismissed the case. Since that time, Mr. Benson has become a Seventh-day Adventist. He would not have fared so easily had he been a Seventh-day Adventist when he was indicted. And again, this is taken from A.T. Jones's book, The Two Republics, pages 883 to 887. So you can see there. And there were many more cases like this, where people that were Sunday keepers were working on Sunday, and they were not punished. They were not fined. They were not arrested. But Seventh-day Adventists who were working on Sunday, they were fined. They were imprisoned. They were arrested. And this is what's going to happen again. You can count on it. So, if you agree and appreciate with this type of content, and you want this video to be shared far and wide, then tap that like button at the bottom of this video. And if you have any questions or comments, then by all means place them at the bottom of this video. And if you haven't subscribed, we would highly encourage you to do so. Thank you for joining us here at Jewels of Truth. We hope and pray that you will have a good day in the Lord.